Good morning and welcome to Metalarkers 62. I'm Howard Bryant. Amin Elhassan is here. Kate Fagan is not, but in Kate's chair we have from Charlotte, although I thought it was the Midwest, but it's not the Midwest, the Kansas City legend, the great Joe Posnanski, author of books, co-host of the podcast here on Metalark with Mike Schur. Welcome, Joe. How are you? Happy New Year.
Doing great. Happy New Year to you.
Outstanding. We're going to go first. We got a couple of housekeeping items. I was thinking about you, Joe, and I was speaking of Kansas City. My editor, Jenna Janovi, whom you know, I believe.
I do.
Jenna sent me as a housewarming gift a box of Kansas City steaks a couple of years ago. And my goodness, those were good, I got to say. And as a Christmas gift, I paid it forward and I sent a box of Kansas City steaks to my neighbor. And that was my New Year's resolution, just for being a good friend. So the New Year's resolution in 2023 is try to do something nice just because. Nice matters. People like nice. That's where I'm going this year.
I love it.
Housekeeping item number 2, speaking of Kansas City, I was thinking when you have Joe on, you immediately think of the late, great Buck O'Neil. You think about the great town. I was going to suggest going to the Negro League Museum, 18th and Vine. When you're there, it's always phenomenal. Say hi to Bob Kendrick for both of us. And that has to be said. It's a prerequisite every time you mention Kansas City. It's a must. And thirdly, I would say in terms of our items, it's uncomfortable. It hurts. The ensuing flu symptoms are no fun. But if you are 50 or approaching it, get your shingles vaccine. I got mine 2 days ago. It is no fun, but it's better than shingles.
My mom caught shingles. My mom caught shingles about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Yeah, it's awful.
Fourth and finally, housekeeping items, of course, is our honorary captains for Metalarkers 62. So many offensive linemen, but I'm only going to go with one. I'm going to go San Francisco 49ers, Guy McIntyre, 62. Moving on over to, let's go to the Pucks. Let's go to the Washington Capitals speedster, Carl Hagelin. And if we go to baseball at 62, let's go to that old comet from the New York Yankees who did not become what everybody thought he was going to become, Jabba Chamberlain. Another 62.
God bless football's Jabba Chamberlain.
All right. Anybody get Joe? I mean, any honorary captain nominees?
I think you've got to nominate Vic Power. Vic Power at 62.
Vic Power was number 62?
I believe Vic Power was number 62.
Oh, man, we got a winner.
I think you got to go
I've never even seen the back of Vic Power. George, I don't know what number he was. How on earth would you see Vic Power's number?
I could just be making that up too. That's also the possibility, but I'm pretty sure Vic Power was 62.
I'm gonna have to look that up. You know,
I don't know if we've had any 62s in basketball.
I was gonna say a 60. That is hard. That's a hard number.
I want to say Scott Pollard, but don't quote me on that.
Oh, you know what? That is a good one. Although why am I thinking he was 71? 62 might be there though. Gonna have to look this up as we go. On to our show. Today, the reason this episode is titled "What Price Joy" is because we do appreciate joy, don't we, Joe? Do you appreciate joy?
I very much appreciate joy.
And beauty. I mean, you appreciate beauty, don't you?
I'm a fan of beauty, yeah.
You're a fan of, I'm a fan of beauty. And so we're coming off the World Cup, the beautiful game. We're looking at 2023, where baseball is now going to incorporate actual changes, legislation to offset and overcome the over-reliance on analytics and what the actual data has done to sort of squeeze the life out of how these sports are played or change the way these games are played. We're seeing it across the board in different sports. And I was thinking what we should do is just go from sport to sport. Obviously, let's start with football. And let's go to the Chiefs-Raiders game earlier this season. We got a roughing the passer call, and Troy Aikman says on the broadcast, I'm hoping that the NFL Competition Committee looks at this in the next set of meetings and, we take the dresses off. Clearly, he goes back and apologizes after the storm, calling him a misogynist and everything else. But the point remains. Football is less about beauty than the other sports, but football is still battling with that balance between safety and why and the brutality of the sport. Obviously, everything gets sobered up when Damar Hamlin is being resuscitated on the field, but football is constantly caught in this battle between what type of game are we watching? Are we watching a sport of skill, or have we taken all the defense out of it? We can't hit. You got to roughen the passer call any single time you breathe on the quarterback. Joe, as our guest, let's start with you. When you're watching this sport and you're seeing this sort of alchemy of balancing, hitting a defenseless receiver, and some people, let's face it, people watch this game for hits.
Sure.
How do you square what you're seeing in terms of those negotiations?
Well, it's so much different than it used to be, right? I mean, we used to not only watch those hits, we'd celebrate them. The NFL would put out videos, greatest hits and with sound to make sure that you got the full sense of the
field
force.
mic.
Yeah, exactly. The full sense of the force that these guys were hitting with. Obviously, the biggest hitters were celebrated across the board. And it's really different now. And I got to say, it's a very sort of confusing experience watching the NFL now, because there are rules in place. Obviously, they've been trying to sort of legislate kickoffs out of the game, which they've not fully done, but moving to the 25-yard line and having kickers kick more balls in the end zone. They've essentially taken away the onside kick. You can't do any of those things. So they have like these interesting sort of side rules that they've done, but then the game itself is still violent and always will be. And so it's like, it's a very strange sort of, alchemy is the right word, trying to figure out how to make the game so it's still beautiful and dangerous and fun, but also, we're not killing people out there. So it is tough. I find it very difficult to watch football these days.
And the kickoff is actually one of the 101-yard kickoff returns, one of the most exciting plays in the game.
Absolutely. I think that's part of it. Look, we know how unsafe it is, but the blindside hit of the quarterback used to be one of the highlights of the game, right? It's like you would see the guy closing in on the quarterback's back. Quarterback doesn't see him. There's a chance for a fumble. There's a chance for him just to explode the through the guy. And look, it was exciting.
Exactly.
It was exciting, but
it's like those memes where you hit the guy and he just turns into 1,000 like pieces of brick, right?
right. And it was exciting, no question about it. And you can't have it anymore. And now it's funny, you go back and look at some of the old highlights of guys doing those sorts of things, and you're going, wow, that is as barbaric as the NFL might seem now. I mean, back in those days, there were no rules.
And those were the rules after the rules. If you go back to the reason why we've got helmets and grills and the rest of it is because guys were getting their eyes ripped out during the game.
Yeah, I mean, like
you add on this.
I like the idea that, like, guy comes back to the sideline after a play and says, "What are you doing out there?" Like, "What? I tried to tackle him, coach." You take his eyes out or you don't play. Excuse me. But to me, when it comes to football, it comes to all these sports, I have an overarching theory about all of this. And it might seem a little bit out there, but it's not about safety. I mean, now more of these rules are about safety for football, but it started before safety was an issue. It started with nobody likes watching a 12-6 game or not a 9-6 game like the Dolphins and the Jets. We don't want that. You guys are both baseball guys. You remember the Nike commercial, "Chicks dig the long ball," right? People enjoy offensive explosion, right? As a function of each of these sports, whatever the sport is, we enjoy offensive explosion. So when the game becomes tighter and more defensive minded and uglier, the competition committees all say the same thing. We need to loosen this thing up. We need more offense. We need to encourage offense, right? Because that's the thing that people really like. So you do all these things in the name of tinkering with the formula so they get more offense. But then what ends up happening, unintended consequences, is it veers all too far, because now everything is geared to hitting that pleasure zone again and again and again and again and again, to when it loses all meaning. The whole point where we like a dunk, we like a home run, we like a 99-yard kickoff return, is because it is juxtaposed against all the failure in it, right? If it
because
happens,
it's rare.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it has to be
why
rare.
we like it. And all of it, and this is where I get crazy, all of this reminds me of where we are as a society with algorithm driven everything, whether it's social media, whether it's shopping,
Or
whether
Netflix.
it's election, right? Entertainment, right? The idea that people were saying, hey, what do you like? I like lacrosse. And every time I watch SportsCenter, I don't get enough lacrosse coverage. Where's my lacrosse coverage? Or I get a little bit of, I need lacrosse. So the algorithm says, this guy likes lacrosse. You know what? We're going to custom make his own SportsCenter that really focuses a lot on lacrosse. Well, that's great, right? It's like, oh, the thing I wanted that I was underserved, I'm now receiving a lot of. And then the algorithm also figures out, people like lacrosse also enjoy beer or also enjoy diapers or whatever. So they start throwing in other stuff that is related through the algorithm to the thing you like. But what happens is, because we have limited attention spans, that something has to go. So now you end up in a place where your SportsCenter is all lacrosse and diapers, right? And you begin to not even understand that there's a world happening outside of this. So then when someone says, man, did you see what happened in the Nets game last night? Like, Nets? No one's talking about that. Because in my world, in my algorithm world, that's not an important thing. The important thing was the lacrosse. The same thing with these sports, man. Oh, man, did you see that great post move? Or did you see, like, what? No, show me the threes and the dunks. I don't care about anything else. And so now we have this warped reality where people are just being fed what they think they want and what the algorithm thinks they want, rather than the complex, rich, varied diet, which is, yes, sometimes the quarterback has to get his bell rung.
Well, and if you're actually talking about the strategy of the game and the strategic nature of the sport, then you're doing the same thing. It's the same algorithm type of mentality, which is, okay, we have seen by analyzing this data over and over and over again that if you don't double team the left tackle, the quarterback is going to get his ass kicked. I mean, this is what's going to happen. And also, like, let's not forget, when you're talking about offense, I will counter you, Amin, with offense and excitement, violence, something else, because a couple things happen. Let's go back to the 90s, shall we? Not basketball 90s. Final score, Bulls 71, Pacers 68, and Michael Jordan led all scorers with 37 points.
In overtime.
In overtime, right? But let's go back to the 90s and let's go to hockey. Let's go when Wayne Gretzky and Eric Lindros and Mario Lemieux were talking about the sport being beautiful and now becoming way, way, way too thuggish. And they tried to take the fighting out of the game. And the fans and the sponsors were like, what? Wait, we're missing something, folks. So we need this. So it's not just the offense. It's also the culture. It's also the violence. It's also what we think we're watching this for. Right.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, when I think about hockey in the 90s, I think of always the comparison to Olympic hockey with the bigger rink and the less, violence outlawed, basically. And it's this truly beautiful game and great offensive scoring. And, yes, there is a certain level. I'm not going to deny American bloodlust, right? That we want to go to the Coliseum and we want to see a lion eat someone, and then cheer and have whatever the Roman equivalent of popcorn was.
And also, let's not forget too, I'm sorry, let's also not forget the 90s hockey is also remembered for Jacques Demers and the neutral zone trap, which is why they got rid of the red line. So it is an offensive thing too. It's like you get a 1-goal lead and then you just clog the middle for 56 minutes. Yeah. And like, nobody wants to watch this. And so the New Jersey Devils were winning Stanley Cups, but the people weren't watching the game. It was like, this is boring. So you got to get rid of the red line. You got to get rid of the 2-line pass. You got to open this thing up.
Yeah, but don't you
I'm
think?
sorry. Yeah,
No, no. I was going to say, but don't you think? So think about hockey in the 80s, like in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. You'd literally have Wayne Gretzky standing behind the net. Nobody's bothering him. He's just standing back there. They would like wind it around to him. He would just be standing there looking for guys to pass to.
He's in the
Nobody would
office.
come after him. Yeah, and it was great. And it was, you'd score 5-6 goals a game, and it was super fun. But I think to Amin's point, then suddenly that was the algorithm, was you got to score 1 million goals. And that kind of got boring. And it was like, there are too many goals being scored. Goal doesn't feel special like it used to be. And then, of course, it goes all the way with the neutral zone trap to 1-0 games all the time. And you never saw goals. And that was terrible. And they had to fix that. So it feels like that the way we view the game and the way we view what beautiful is in the sports, it changes over time.
It does.
And we always want something that we're not getting, it feels like to me.
Well, what we want is a balanced diet.
Yeah.
And what's happened is, as we try to achieve that balance, we go too far in the opposite direction.
Right.
The pendulum shifts way too far to the right or to the left. And, again, like you think about baseball, where baseball was, and then all of a sudden, the home run explosion. And part of it is, using the metaphor of the algorithm, but in some of these cases, it is an actual algorithm. It is actual big data, the arrival of big data into sports. The idea that I can take decades of information and put it into a script, and that pops out, you should be doing this. Like, that was something that did not exist. All those tinkers that happened through the first 100 years of American sports was kind of like eye test, really.
I'm
They
going
scored
with
too many
my
goals.
gut.
Yeah,
I'm Leo DeRocher. I'm making my decisions based on what I think is going to happen right now. Has anybody watched the Netflix series Losers?
Yes.
I think it's really good.
Not all of it, but I've watched like the what's a curling guy.
This is what I'm here to talk about.
The ice skater.
Yes, and what is it? Saria Bonnet, the French skater.
Yes, the French.
So essentially,
French skater.
Losers is a Netflix series of these 30-minute shorts of moments where a person was at their peak and did not win, or had to deal with some form of loss. The beauty of the series is that it's not all the big, the Bill Buckner stories that we think we know. It's really, it's smaller level stories, but they're really human and they're really, really good. And some of them make you wonder at the end of the episode, are you really a loser? It makes you question the idea of what we're calling a loser. And one of the ones that is pertinent to this conversation is the curling episode, about how there was a guy named Pat Ryan who's curling champion in Canada, and they were talking about losing the championship in 1985, and he recognized that there was some big data to be paid attention to, that trying to score all the time was actually counterintuitive to winning, that the way to win was to play a lot more defense and do a lot more hitting, which is to knock as many rounds off as you can. And it was counterintuitive, and he became a champion, and the end result was a lot of 0-0 games, and people sort of there was a revolt on that style of play, neutral zone trap style. I've figured out a way to actually win, and it reminds me of a lot of the strategy that you see now. I mean, are you still there? Are you frozen?
No, I'm still here. I'm trying to, I seem to remember it wasn't just that he became wildly successful, it was overnight. Like he wasn't.
It was one season after. He was like recognizing why I lost, and let's exploit the flaw in these styles. And this and this will bring us over to baseball. Baseball is now moving to bigger bases. We're doing something. They've been playing this game since the end of the Civil War, and now in 2023 we're going to have a legal defense,
right?
And so that's bizarre. And the argument has always been, well, okay, if you want to exploit the left-hander who is a straight Ted Williams, David Ortiz pull hitter, okay, then put everybody on that side. But if you want to beat that, then hit it the other way. There's no reason to add illegal defense to it, but yet here we are. And one of the things when you go back, we've been doing this for 20, 25 years now, but I want to go back to one of my favorite people in the sport that I'm going to ruthlessly criticize right now, and that is Joe Torre. Joe Torre is one of the first guys who did some of that exploitation, and it was to get Pedro Martinez out of the game. We got to run up pitch counts.
Yep.
To, those Yankee Red Sox games, Pedro was so dominant that the Yankee strategy became an orthodoxy for the rest of the game, and has been there ever since. Get the starting pitcher out of the game. He can only throw so many pitches. So if Pedro is at 94 pitches in the 5th inning, I'll take my chances with the bullpen. And the result of that wonderful strategy to get the best pitcher in the game out of the sport was a 3-2 game that was 4 hours and 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Those at bats with like 17 foul hits.
And exactly. And now when you look at box scores, in addition to at bats, runs, hits, RBI, also now have number of pitches taken.
Sure.
In the box score. Unintended consequence.
Well, I think what's very interesting to me, and this goes across sports, but it's certainly particularly true in baseball, is it seems very rare to me that somebody comes up with an innovation like what you're talking about with curling, or the neutral zone trap, or Pat Riley's efforts to slow the game down and make it more physical, where it makes the game more fun to watch. Very, right. Very rarely are these innovations make the game more enjoyable.
You mean to tell me Hack-a-Shaq doesn't make you glued to the TV? Is he going to make these free throws?
They did that last night in the Nets game. Well, the Nets were trying to get to Robert Williams, but he passed the ball before they could intentionally foul him in an 11-point game.
Yeah. So these things are never really intended that way. They're intended to help you win. So, I think I literally am doing a story. I've just finished a story that I'm writing for Esquire about the new rule changes and in baseball, and they are likely going to be the biggest on-field changes in 50 years, certainly since the designated hitter, and maybe ever, because it's going to affect every pitch with a new pitch clock that comes with all sorts of side things. You're not allowed to throw to first base more than twice anymore. There are like all sorts of things that have come along with it. You mentioned the banning of the shift, the bigger bases. It's going to be a fundamentally different game, but the effort is to make it more like it used to be. Like, that's the thing that is, so it's basically they are trying to counter all of those changes from Joe Torre's efforts to stretch the game out, La Russa's effort to use, the bullpen extensively, the shifting that has really gotten out of control. The last year, the 4-man outfield became a huge thing, and that's no good for the game, for watching the game. And so they are coming up with rules to basically just try to put the game back. They're not even trying to like make it better in a futuristic way. They're just trying to make it look a little bit more like it did 20 years ago or 15
We're trying to play for the tie. We're trying to get back. I'm trying to lose those 10 pounds I gained over Thanksgiving.
That's exactly right. They don't want to, they're like, I don't have a dream body I'm looking for. I just want to get back to the weight I was when I was 40. That's it. That's all they're doing. And look, and I give them a lot of credit for it, because man, baseball, we know this. They don't like change. They don't go for change. They don't make changes, and they're always the last one to change. And now finally, and I give them a lot of credit for this, I think they're being really proactive about trying to win the game back a little bit for the fans. And I don't know how much of it's going to work, how well it's going to work, but I don't think this is the end of it. I think they're going to keep making changes to try to get the game so that there's more action and more excitement, and the games aren't 4 hours long, and all of the things that have happened over the last 20 years.
Go ahead.
These things all happen because we have the intersection of entertainment product versus sporting event.
Right.
And that's right.
The sporting influence is what drives us to have the 13, 18 foul hit at bat. It drives us to have the intentional foul, free throws, and all that. because they're trying to win. I don't care about ratings or whatever. These coaches,
No.
these managers just want to win, and they realize this path gives them the greatest opportunity for that. But at the end of the day, we have to sell this shit. Your salary is based on our ability to sell it, and you're not helping us. And so that's where we see the conflict. I guess my question to you guys is, at least from the baseball perspective, is this a little bit of Pandora's box? Can we get back, or is it gone?
Well, exactly. And I always think that, Joe, one of the things too is, let's not forget technology, because if you really, in my opinion, what has killed the stolen base in the sport is instant replay.
Right.
Because I would have done in addition to this, I said, if you're going to have instant replay, then you also have to have a spirit of the slide rule.
Yes.
Meaning that if you're going to call a guy out for coming off 1/2 of a millimeter because you've got super slow-mo, that's not the spirit. If he beats you to the base, it's almost the same as what's a catch in football anymore, right? That if you the ball can hit the ground now, as long as it doesn't move. If it doesn't move,
did he make a football move? What about a football
for
move?
1 millisecond.
Yeah,
that's right. You have to make a football move to make it a fumble. There has to be some subjective form of spirit to this, because if all you're going to do is go back and look at the super 4D super slow-mo, and while we're watching the little grains of dirt come up, if his pinky comes off the base, you're going to call him out. No one's going to steal. There's too much risk involved.
Absolutely. I think a huge percentage of stolen bases that were called safe in the past would be called out now. I was watching, they had on the original Hail Mary pass that Staubach threw back in against the Vikings, I guess.
74?
Yeah, against the Vikings. He didn't catch that ball. There's like almost every great catch you see now. You see the ball hit the ground and they're picking it up. And it's like this is ridiculous. None of these catches would count in today's game. And I mean, have we really, has the game gotten better because of that? I don't think so. I think the Pandora's box thing is true in some ways, but here's what I do believe. So this year there's going to be a real pitch clock in baseball. And what everybody tells me across the board from MLB is it is going to be ruthlessly called. No matter how many people complain about it, no matter what the early line is, it will be ruthlessly called, and they fully expect to knock 15 to 20 minutes off the game. They just think that's absolutely going to happen. There's no way it can't happen if they use it right. So yes, there is and the game won't change. It's not like anything is gonna. I mean, you never know what's going to happen, but it's going to be the same amount of action in 15, 20 minutes less. The pace is going to improve. So I think that while there are some things you can't get back, you're not going to change it so that pitchers aren't throwing 100 miles an hour anymore. You're not going to change it so that hitters are going to, suddenly be able to hit ground balls the other way or whatever. A lot of those things are just now part of the game. I think there are ways to sort of make it, and they're not that difficult, to make it so that it is a little bit more like it used to be. And frankly, those sorts of things should have been done. And this is exactly what I think you're saying, Howard. These things should have been done like in real time. Like they should have seen it with the stolen base. And by the way, they think stolen bases will be up significantly this year because of the only being allowed to throw over 2 times rule. And because of the bigger bases, which is going to cut the distance a tiny amount between the bases. They think that we might start seeing guys steal 60 and 70 bases again, which everybody wants. Everybody wants that. So I don't know how much of it's going to like work perfectly, but I think that there is every reason to believe that some of this is going to go back to the way it was.
Well, you got to be able to score without hitting the ball over the fence, because you only hit the ball over the fence 7 or 8% of the time. I mean, the greatest home run hitters, whether you're talking Mark McGwire or Babe Ruth, they never hit 20%.
No,
you're at 11 or 12 in your best seasons. In your very best seasons, you're looking at maybe 11, 12%. Most guys are hitting home runs at a 4 or 5% clip of all their total hits.
And to Amin's point, I mean, how many home runs can we watch before that starts getting boring? That really is what happened. It's really what happened was after a while, it's like we had the chicks dig the long ball leading right into another guy with 60 home runs. I mean, it definitely That it has to feel special. When the home run stops feeling special, that's a big bad problem for baseball.
Joe, what happens when what year was it? I think it was, and we're going to move to the next sport, but what year? I think it was 2011. What year was it when I think it was the Braves and the Cardinals in that playoff game, and the umpires just blew a call at around third base, fly ball. I remember what it was, and it was like, this has to change. And I remember talking to Bud about this, and he immediately said that because Bud Selig was one of the biggest holdouts on the human error element of the sport.
Right.
That human error is part of a game. And Joe Torre was another one who was a big holdout on the human error being part of this, which is why they didn't want replay. They didn't want to slow the game down. And now, to Amin's point about not being able to go back, now that you have completely embedded and legalized gambling into your sport, you have to get those calls right now. You can't just say, oh, well, the replay said he was out, but we're going to call him safe because of spirit.
Entertainment.
Like, oh, no, you're not.
No.
Right?
No.
I mean, the dollars that are actually on the sport right now, because of this new added revenue stream and this acceptance of gambling, you can't go back from replay.
Nope.
So now you've got to add some level of subjection to it, because you can't take it away, because now you look corrupt.
I think you could take it even further. I think that because of the gambling, and because every moment of every game is being bet on at this point, automatic strike calls are inevitable. Absolutely inevitable. I mean, I don't know how long it'll take, but there's no way when you have like real money.
Well, you saw the news yesterday that they just announced that all AAA games are going to be robot umps.
Robot umps.
So
that's
it's
Hawkeye.
coming.
That's the technology, the VAR technology from the World Cup. They were using it at the Fall League to call strikes. And now here we go. We're in the future.
Well, and let's go back to the past. When Hawkeye first became prevalent in tennis, they went to the Players Association and Major League Baseball. They went to Don Fehr and company and said, "Hey, you can use this technology for your strike balls and strikes. You can, we can adapt this technology for fair and foul calls." But back then, because it was a simulation, the baseball play, because it was not a real-time camera, it was a technology sensor simulation. They were like, we're not calling balls and strikes based on a cartoon, because when you watch tennis, it'll just show you it'll show you the image. But it's like,
I love it.
Right? and I remember Mike Weiner and Don Fehr and everyone saying, cartoon?
Yeah.
There's no way we're going to agree to that's going to be accurate. So now here we are 25 years later, and now we're going to go back to we're going to use a beep. How different is that than the cartoon? They could have done this 20 years ago. And now for our grand finale, let's go to Greg Popovich, who the other night was being asked about the extending of defenses and how the game is so spread out now, and how the game is so completely three heavy, that he just said, I've said before, I'm just hoping the league ends up with a 4-point shot or a 5-point shot so we can make it a real circus. It'll be a different sport. It won't even be basketball. It'd just be a bunch of crap. And so here we are now.
Joy and beauty from Greg Popovich.
Joy and beauty from Greg Popovich. People have been criticizing the modern game, and I'm not sure. Is it three crazy? Yes. Do I dislike it? Yes. But do I want to go back to Pacers 69, Knicks 64? No. However, let's take a look. Last year, the league average was 35.4% from threes. That was so you're missing 65% of your shots, right? Mm-hmm. Last year, Minnesota, 45% of their shots were threes. The year before, Utah, 49.4% of their shots. They were taking 88 shots a game, and 43.5 of them, I think, were like three-pointers. Mm-hmm. This year, Dallas is leading the league in three-point percentage in terms of percentage of your overall shots that are threes. They're at 49.3%. And so my issue with this is that basketball has always been a game of makes. I mean, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
When we were kids growing up and when you're watching the sport in the 80s, and to some part early the 90s as well, you make 50% of your shots from the field, you make 80% of your shots from the line. That's a good offensive player. And today, when the league average, if you're taking 40%, 42, 43, 44% of your shots are from three, there's a lot more misses in this sport than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And the question for you, Amin, on this, and I know we've had this conversation before about, is this what price beauty and joy, or is this simply cyclical? Because if you go back, go look at Bob Cousy, he was shooting 37.5% for his career.
Exactly.
So where do we stand on the beauty versus analytics? You were talking earlier, Joe, about going to a game with Daryl Morey. And I remember talking to Chris Wallace about this and talking to Tom Thibodeau. And he said, look, the analytics tell us that the corner three or the dunk are the two highest percentage shots in the game. That's what we're trying to get every trip down court. And it's a very different sport when that is your offensive objective, especially when, if you look at the 2-point percentages, teams are shooting 54, 55% from two. So the shots, the ability to shoot the ball is better than ever. But the way the game is played undermines that. I mean, go, let's hear it.
So this is one of the interesting things, because if you look at right now, league average field goal percentage, regular everyday field goal percentage is about 47%. 20 years ago, in 1993, the league average was 47%.
Yeah, that's right.
And go back to 1983, it was a little higher, it was about 48%. So overall, the shots being made are made at around the same clip. The difference is where are these shots being made from, and they're all 93 was 30 years ago. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jeremy. I'm so old, man. It all I can't come
it's all
to grips
the same now.
I can't come to grips with that 1993 was 30 years ago. I'm like, it's like 10 years ago, right? Yeah, Jeremy says he wasn't born yet, 1992. There you go. That puts everything.
Jeremy doesn't want anyone to talk to him.
So if you're looking at it, it's like, okay, what is our shot distribution? And you've seen all these fancy charts where they map where all the field goal makes are from. And 30 years ago, in 1993, it was like this blend all over. And now it is a bright red spot around the rim, a bright red line around the three-point arc, and everything else is just scatters. And that's what the part of the issue is, this homogenization of shot selection, is that we went from a time where we had all these different quirky players who would score in their own ways. And now it seems like we're getting a carbon copy of, maybe not in the style, but certainly in terms of shot selection, location. The bigger issue to me isn't that. The bigger issue to me is 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago, David Stern and the competition committee said scoring is way too low. These games are agonizing. These Pistons Pacers games with Chauncey Billups and Jermaine O'Neal. These games are too slow and too physical. The offensive players that people pay money to see do acrobatic things, moves, we're not seeing any of it anymore. We need to loosen it up. So we get the hand check rules that we basically eliminate your ability to touch an offensive player if he's facing the basket. And then the other thing was the removal of illegal defense and allowing of zone. Those two things have resulted in plus the three-point explosion, have resulted in what we have now, which is defensive players, defensive coaches tell me all the time, what am I supposed to do? I can't.
And the fact that you can palm the ball.
Well, I mean, but that's to be fair, that's been a thing forever in basketball, right?
Well, no, it's not.
Come on.
I'm watching.
Oh, Magic
no.
was carrying the hell out of it
I'm
coming up the
watching
court.
Jason Tatum walk the ball up the court last night. He's literally flipping the ball. That it is so extreme now.
Look,
you cannot tell me.
Patrick Ewing didn't have a single post up where he didn't carry. He would dribble and then wait and then dribble and then wait. I mean, this is what Scottie Pippen would dribble up the court, put his hand on the ball, take 2 steps, and then keep dribbling. Like, this is something that's as American as apple pie. It's always been a part of our game, and it's always had the complaints. You've always said, oh, they carry too much. But when I can't touch you, that's a problem. The problem isn't that the guys are carrying. The problem is I can't do anything about it. I can't dislodge them. I can't forearm check. I cannot be physical. I have to do everything hands off and basically moving my feet. And so people say, oh, they don't play defense in the NBA, or guys don't care about playing defense. It's not that they don't care, but the rules say I can't do it. And if I do it the way you want me to, we get 20 free throws, 20 like Jimmy Butler had the other night down in Miami. So the reality of it is the rules that were made to loosen up the offense ultimately were too successful. And now we are at a place with, combined with big data, combined with the rise of the three-point shot, and knowing those spots, the corner threes and the dunks are the most efficient, and free throws, there needs to be an adjustment. But the problem is, I think everyone fears, is the adjustment just going to do the opposite and bring us back to the Stone Ages?
Yeah, no question. Joe?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. I went to a game with Daryl Morey, and it was fascinating to sit next to him, because every single shot, he's like, yeah, that's a 41% shot. That's a 39% shot. That's a 43%. Like, they'd have the ball and he'd be like, shoot, that's 44%. You know what I mean? Like it was just numerically, driven. And look, I don't think that fundamentally in and of itself is a bad thing. I find, the 3-point shot to be, what's more enjoyable and wonderful than watching Steph Curry play. I mean, I still find great beauty in it, but I think it comes back to the same thing that we talked about with home runs, same thing you talk about with football, which is too much of the same. It not only gets boring, you stop sort of feeling amazed by it. It's like how many, I mean, a 3-point shot from the corner is that's a pretty cool shot. But if you see people make it, 500 times, and that's everything that they're going for, yeah, it loses a lot of its impact. And I think that's the big problem, is variety.
Yeah.
And don't you think that's true across sports?
It is.
Once people figure out what's working, that's it. Everybody does exactly the same thing, or something similar.
The copycat league piece of it.
We need new sports with no archival data, so that we.
I just like watching those Instagram videos of the guys who are essentially playing rugby basketball, where they're just tackling and knocking each other over. And so but my issue, to be honest, is not everything that's being said here. My issue is the number of misses. I don't watch basketball to see missed shots. I watch basketball to see makes. Basketball has always been a game of makes. Wilt Chamberlain shot 72% from the field one year. I mean, if you go back and look at the greatest scorers in the game, there were certain guys who were volume guys who really couldn't shoot, who just shot a lot. But go look at Adrian Dantley, 55% from the field. Look at Dr. J, 53, 54. Guys made shots. Maurice Cheeks was not even a scorer, 57% from the field one year. I mean, so to me, the hard part is the number of stretches going up and down the court where it's brick after brick after brick after brick. And to your point, I mean, yes, the shooting percentages end up being the same, but the number of possessions as they go up, the number of misses are going up exponentially, and that changes how I see the sport.
For sure. To the point of possessions, by the way, this is one of the things that blew my mind. I worked for the Phoenix Suns in 2009-2010. We ended the season with an offensive rating that was either third or fourth in NBA history. Now here we are. Let me do the math. 13 years later, we're out of the top 25. In all-time offensive ratings. But here's the crazy part. Of the top 25 team offensive ratings in NBA history, 20 of them have happened in the last 3 years. Let me repeat that.
That sounds like the top 25 in baseball. It's like
20 of them
changed.
To the point where the Warriors with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, the one that blew everyone's mind, has ruined basketball. I think they're like 17th or something like that.
Jeez.
So again, we're at an inflection point where there needs to be something done even if it risks throwing us back in the wrong direction, because then we can bring it back. Either that, or as I just said a second ago, or we need to find a new sport.
Yeah.
Something with
No.
no archival data, so that we don't have big data letting us know, oh, this is the way to play it. We're all learning it as we go. With like that competitive tag, the one or the one
chess boxing. We all need to be
Chess
focusing
boxing.
very heavily on chess boxing.
The Minnesota Timberwolves are averaging 93 shots a game
Jeez.
this year. It's just a different sport. And so, but once again, their efficiency isn't necessarily, I mean, they just get a lot of possession. They're getting a lot of shots. And it's just, I guess the point is, as we close this up, Joe, you got to go. As we close, as you go forward, I know you've got, your finger on the pulse of baseball. Are you expecting, I know you're expecting change. Are you expecting joy to come with it? Are you expecting to see a prettier sport? Do you need to see that as well? Or are you just watching this as a science project as well?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of optimistic. Yeah, that the game is going to be at a faster pace. To me, that was my biggest issue, was that the pace of the game was just too slow, too sluggish. I mean, I don't know many people in the world that love baseball more than we do. And yet there were times I'm like, this is endless. This has got to pick it up. I mean, let's go.
Yeah.
So I love that. I think that absolutely could make a deal. But here's what I really like most. And this is just specifically to baseball, because I don't see other sports necessarily reacting this way. And they were so much more proactive than baseball has been for the last 50 years. But baseball is finally getting that they need to make the sport more enjoyable for fans. I think they were just more than happy to go, it'll all work itself out. The hitters will figure it out. The pitchers will figure it out. We're just going to stay in the background. Baseball is perfect. 90 feet is perfection, blah, blah, blah. And they let the game get away from them.
Well, and that's how the players were the ones saying the same thing. They're like, well, if they're coming to the game, they're coming for the game. Leave the game alone. They were a big part of that.
Well, absolutely. It wasn't just, when I say baseball, I mean all of them. Yeah. I think players, owners, management. One of the really funny things is one of the guys, maybe even the main guy in trying to bring baseball back is Theo Epstein, who I talked to extensively. Theo will tell you point blank, he didn't care about this when he was running the Cubs and the Red Sox. He didn't care about making the sport better for fans. Like, he was there to win. That's what he was paid for. That's what he was paid to do. So I'm kind of excited about it. But I'll let me throw one more thing at you just to sort of bring this full circle. We started with the NFL, and I am fascinated. Maybe I'm the only one, but I'm fascinated that the Pro Bowl this year is going to be flag football. That they're literally going to have a flag football Pro Bowl this year. And obviously it's, the Pro Bowl just became such a joke, and obviously injuries are nobody wants anybody to get hurt.
You can't play it.
So now they're going to do it with flag football. You know what? A bunch of people will still watch it because it's the NFL. But I do wonder, like, is anybody there watching the flag football to go, hey, is there anything we can pull from this? Is there anything that we can
think
use?
so.
I think they might be. I really
unintended
think
consequence. Everybody loved it. It was rated higher than the Super Bowl. and you know what? MTV Rock and Jock was actually way ahead of its time.
Hey, Robert Edwards. Robert Edwards
up in the sand. That's exactly right.
Tore up his knee playing flag football.
Yes, he did.
MTV Rock and Jock.
I guess this year they're not doing it in the sand. Thank goodness for that. At least they're doing it on real
final
grass.
thought.
Yeah, no, I think ultimately Theo Epstein is a great example of, like, hey, I'm not paid to make this fun for you.
I created this monster and now I'm trying to kill it.
Now he's it reminds me of like Frank Abagnale, like the great
yes, Catch Me If You Can.
Con man, Catch Me If You Can. And he's conning all the way, and then ultimately goes to prison, and he gets out of prison, and the first job he's got is working for the FBI. And a lot of the counter fraud measures in this country, or indeed in the world, are because this dude, who is the absolute goat of defrauding people, is now working on the other side. And maybe that's what we need. We need these leagues to start hiring the people who came up with the loopholes, the hackers who defeated the system, to build the new system.
Yeah, and for me, I still feel like I watch the game and Joe, we talked about this on your pod a while ago. The revelation that I had during the 2020 World Series, the Blake Snell game, where I never thought I had to articulate it, but I realized that I did, was that I don't watch the game for wins and losses. I watch the game for joy, man. I watch the game for competition. I don't watch the game for assembly line pitching to see if can we get 12 guys to get us 27 outs. I want your best against my best. I want to see if Justin Verlander can get through game 4. That's what I want. That's what I'm watching the game for. And when that starts to go away, then I start to go away.
Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting to see if these changes do it. I think from a basketball standpoint, obviously, this is generational. I mean, and Stephen Curry is going to go down as one of the most revolutionary players of all time. He's changed the way the sport's played.
Mhm.
I mean, high school, rec, college, NBA, all of it. I mean, the range. When I was growing up, I used to think Andrew Toney had the most incredible range. Steph Curry's shooting them. I mean, he's literally shooting the ball from the hash mark, and now they all do. Yeah. You don't go back from that. I don't think you can go.
You do. There's one suggestion. If you move the 3-point line out, but the other thing was, I think Tom Haberstroh came up with this. If every NBA arena was like baseball, you got to build your own
different
dimensions.
sizes.
So now
get different dimensions.
So in Milwaukee, the 3-point line is like 8 feet, right? Because Giannis would score all these 3-pointers all of a sudden. But in Golden State, they'll move it out to 30 feet because they'll say you don't have enough.
They have the only 2 guys who can hit that shot consistently. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, this has been, always enjoyable. Thank you, Joe, for joining us. I know we're running a little past your time here. Amin, outstanding as always. We'll have Kate Fagan next on Meadowlarkers 63. And I know she makes fun of me all the time for thinking that I'm making all this up. I got virtually nothing for number 63 right now. The only 63 that is jumping to mind is the Red Sox pitcher Darwinzon Hernandez. It's the only 63 that I know. There's an offensive lineman somewhere that'll hit me, but I do not have a lot of 63s in the valise.
Wait, wasn't Gene Upshaw 63?
Winner, Gene Upshaw, Hall of Famer, the late great Gene Upshaw. I had a week. I'm thinking it would have hit me, but
all right,
there it is.
You would have gotten there.
There it is. Thank you, boys. We will see you next week.